This is Maui Community College with a world of knowledge here at home.
To the third class in the survey of sociology. And first of all, I offer my humble apologies and beg forgiveness from all of you. The WebCT has not worked properly as I would have liked. There's a problem that is not here at the college, but rather at the central server somewhere in Manoa, buried deep in a cave that no one knows how to get to or apparently fix. But I hope that by the time that you see this, that things are working and well, and you're getting some kind of response. Should this not be the case, I will answer you directly by email. If you have not received the assignment or have not gone yet to the WebCT site, please just email me if you can't get the assignment and the quiz for this week. Okay? There's a quiz and an assignment schedule, so WebCT should have it under the quizzes and under assignment. And I hope that by now everybody has become familiarized with WebCT and knows how to access. And anybody in this class has a problem with it still, aside from the obvious mechanical? Yes. This morning there was a problem. Yes, when you talk to me, I cannot hear you. I'm deaf unless you press the microphone. So please, when you talk to me here in the class, just press the microphone, I'll be able to respond as well. Any other questions so far on the technical aspects? Or any of the administrative issues? First of all, from our assignment that we had the last time, you were supposed to read an article, and if you read the assignment sheet on WebCT, which by now most of you will have access to, you should have been able to access the link to the Maui News, to the Honolulu Advertiser, or the New York Times. You may pick an article every week to choose to discuss and relate to the chapter that we cover in class. Today we will be talking about the functionalist and the conflict perspective, sociological perspective. We'll be talking about research in sociology, and we'll be talking about the future in the 21st century.
Question.
Yes, please.
What if you happen to see like a really interesting news story on TV, like 60 Minutes had something really cool on? Can you summarize that?
Summarize that, and I believe that all those kind of stories are linked as well on their website. So if you can link, give me the link so I have an idea of what you're talking about, okay? It's very important I read every article that you choose. Some of you choose the same articles unbeknownst to your fellow students. And so far they've been very interesting and hit right on the point. If I find that you're straying from what the assignment is, if I find that you're not focusing on the chapter and relating it to the story, I'll send you a little email message back and ask you a question, a pertinent question, and so on. Yes?
When you say attach the link, are you saying just write what website that we got?
Well, when you go on the website, just copy the link and put it in your assignment on the top. So when I want to see, you don't have to paste the whole article. Just the link, so when I can go to the same website that you went on, unless you got it manually by a hard copy, and I can see what you read. Then I can assess whether your analysis and assessment of the article is correct. You understand what I'm saying? I gave you the links in the assignment page specifically so that you can go to the Maui News, you can go to the Honolulu Advertiser, the New York Times. If you have another place that you want to go and get the news that you want to discuss, that's fine. Just send me the link so I know where you went also. So I can always go back to the source. Any other questions on the assignment? Okay. And by now I hope everybody has signed the release. If you haven't, please sign it after class. Since to make you movie stars, I have to have your permission to do this. And we'll be talking also today, by the way, about research and ethical methodology. and how we advise people of their rights and possible dangers in participating in research. So you'll see why it's very important that you sign the releases of appearing on cable television, which is a public medium. I want to go back to our three theoreticians that we discussed last time. We discussed, if you remember at the beginning, the father of sociology, even though he didn't even know the term for this particular science or social science, and he was who? Anybody know who the father of sociology is? I don't hear you.
Karl Marx.
Karl Marx, right. And basically what was the central core of his interest and his perception? Yes, Josh?
That with industrialization, people become removed from the product they're creating.
Correct. That's one of the basic tenets. What was the one word he used to describe this removal or distance?
Alienation.
Alienation, exactly, alienation. And we always hear this in every generation. I remember when I was a teenager, well, maybe when I was already an adult, but people were talking about alienation of the young people. People are alienated from one thing or another, alienated from their families, alienated from their community, alienated from the society. Can you think of another word that we can use as a synonym for alienation? Yes.
Oppressed.
Oppressed.
But that's what was happening.
I
to
don't know
them.
if oppressed is such a good synonym. Yes.
Separated.
Separated is a good one. I like the one divorced. Divorce is something everybody can relate to in the 20th and 21st century, isn't it? Divorced, removed, separated from what they create. So that gives us an idea of what Karl Marx was talking about. And the next person who followed him and tried to also explain the Industrial Revolution was a gentleman, a French gentleman, by the name of, I'll give you a hint, his first name was Émile. Anyone want to pick it up? Émile who?
Durkheim.
Durkheim, right? Émile Durkheim. And Émile Durkheim made his big claim to fame with the ideas that there was a conflict of values or an absence of values. And what was the key word that he used to describe this? Anybody give us the term?
Enemy.
Anomie. Normlessness, a lack of values, a lack of normative behavior or expectations, or mores or morality, all suitable synonyms for this particular time at the turn of the century. And then finally, we have the third foundation of sociology, a German gentleman again, whose name was, Sharon?
Max Weber.
Max Weber, yes, apologize for the German pronunciation, but this is the way I learned Max Weber. Unfortunately, I had to read him in the original German, which is very difficult. It's difficult enough in English. And Max Weber's claim to fame was that he looked at the Industrial Revolution and examined it and said that the major change from his perspective at the end of the 19th and beginning of 20th century was what process? What was the process that he observed? Yes.
Rationalization.
Rational behavior. How many times have you said, oh, why don't you be rational? Stop being so emotional. Emotional behavior, is that part of the animal world or only human beings are?
Animals
I
are-
don't hear what you're saying. I'm sorry. The animal world also has emotional behavior? That's an interesting idea. So you think they get angry? I can't read your lips. Okay. So the animals get angry and they have guilt. Aha. So maybe they're not so emotional. Maybe they have one or two emotions, what you identify as emotions, right?
Guilt's not an emotion.
Guilt is a feeling, isn't it?
Is actually would be no, it's not a feeling.
It's not a feeling. So what is guilt?
This is a rationale of a feeling.
Really? Okay. Okay. This is interesting. We'll get more into it when we discuss some social psychological behavior. But that wasn't the answer I was looking for, actually, because I think basically human beings are the ones who are able to feel emotion. I think that animals, from my perspective at least, feel pain. Yes?
What about like, I know my dog used to like get in the trash and would come home and there'd be trash all over the place, and she would like
Yes.
cower and like put her
She
tail.
cowered. So you think that was guilt?
So well, she knew
or
her butt was gonna
embarrassment,
get beat.
or
but-
I have quite a identification with dogs, and that would be fear, not guilt.
okay, fear. I happen to agree with you. That would be mostly fear of the consequences of doing something that they understand is not part of the normative or expected behavior. They don't have, but I don't think they operate out of the emotion. They operate out of real, very biological or expected consequences. They learn those. Those are learned, just as human beings learn about emotions and so on. But Max Weber, he constantly said that the days of sharing values, belief system, religious ideation or ideals are slowly coming to an end with the Industrial Revolution, and people were right now operating according to expected rational behavior. How did he come at it? What happened that propelled this kind of rational feeling in the Industrial Revolution? What came together with the Industrial Revolution in a much more defined and focused way than ever before?
Automation?
Automation was coming, or that was the Industrial Revolution, but something happened in terms of ideology. Yes,
Industrialization?
industrialization, that was part of the same event, but something happened in terms of the way we thought about our purpose in life.
You're not talking about bureaucracy, right?
Now that developed as a result of what I'm looking for. What happened that made America the focus of economic activity? What philosophy did they adopt?
Capitalism.
Capitalism. Capitalism. This is bothered Karl Marx. He wrote a book called Das Kapital, the capital, the root of all evil, money. Except that with the Industrial Revolution, for the first time, you are moving things at a much quicker rate, much bigger volume to much bigger populations of people. That means you had to do it not because you had a friend, Joe, in Wichita, which was in the middle of nowhere in the 19th century, and today is still, I guess, in the middle of nowhere, but don't say anything to your friends in Kansas about this. But what had happened was that capitalism required that you act in a very calculated, planning way, because you had to maximize the production, maximize profits, optimize output. Okay? You couldn't do this by just hanging around or waiting to farm between 4 in the morning when the cows wanted to get up and 2 in the afternoon when you had to get some sleep. So you have to be a lot more calculating, more planned, more rational. That was Max Weber's contribution to the effects of the Industrial Revolution on people. So the minute you're planned and efficient, what do you got to do? You've got to give people titles. Before it was enough. Hey, you got to get your horse shoed. Go see Joe the blacksmith. We went to Joe the blacksmith, who was very good at shoeing horses in a little town. And he knew how to work iron because you make horseshoes from wrought iron or very basic iron. And if you needed something done, you asked Joe, Joe, do you know, can you make me a little table from metal? Even Joe did horseshoes. He also knew how to do blacksmithing and various other chores and use other tools. But in the rational world that Max Weber describes, there was no more Joe the blacksmith in the town who did everything. Now you have specialists. You have guys who are making furniture from wrought iron metal. You have guys who are building wheels for carts. That's a specialty. Everybody becomes specialized. Why? Because you have means of production to mechanize some of these things. And then he tried to explain how also government had changed. And some of you may have read about Abraham Lincoln in the 19th century, taking maybe 3 months to get to Illinois from Washington on a horseback or on a carriage or something. News was not disseminated. Many people didn't even know how he looked like. Why didn't people know how Abraham Lincoln looked like around 1860? Anybody imagine why they didn't know what Abraham Lincoln looked like?
No television.
There's no television, number one. What else wasn't there around yet? Cameras, yes. It was very rare. They were just getting established. So this is a real problem. So you start having to, everybody knows everybody in the 19th century. You're coming into the 20th century. You have services to perform, taxes to collect. Do you think that everybody in the 19th century America paid taxes? But suddenly, you've got to have inspectors. You want to have a systematized approach. You want to collect taxes on money on the products that people produce, profits that companies make. You want to ship things to other countries. You've got to have an export department, a customs department, the police, organized police. How were the policing functions handled in the 19th century? Anybody here watch cowboy movies?
Town sheriff and a deputy.
Town sheriff. And when he needed the people, when someone like, when there was like a bank robbery or something, what would he do?
Deputize somebody.
That's right. You guys got to start watching some cowboy movies. He had his drawer, he pulled up a couple of badges, he said, I deputize you. What about the training? These guys didn't have any training in the legal system, in the Constitution. What did they do if they caught someone? If he was lucky, they brought him back alive. And if he wasn't, there was summary justice out there. But this couldn't really continue when you had a city like New York, or you had a city like Wichita, or a city like San Francisco. So you had police department, you had government. You had to have organized courts, a legal system. You couldn't have a judge coming in once every 3 months, open the jail, the 20 people get in there, come in front of the judge and have a trial. Things have to be more systematic. This is what Max Weber talked about, especially departments, establishing a hierarchical line, a chain of command. Everybody knows what is a chain of command? Who doesn't know what is a chain of command? One guy at the top gives the orders, the next 5 guys below him, they pass on the orders, and you end up having to do it. Okay, so rationale in government, we called it what? Bureaucracies. And later the same term was applied to non-governmental organizations as well. So that was Max Weber, and that brings us to the perspectives that followed these particular theoreticians and sociologists. And the first perspective, or sociological perspective, more correct, that we want to discuss is the functional perspective based on many of the ideas of Durkheim. And Durkheim believed, from his particular perspective, the functionalist perspective, that people imitated, society imitated a living organism. Each part had a function. That's why we have the term functionalism. Very much a biological model. Each part works well only because it interacts with other parts of the organism. As you can see, parts of the social system work together. Functions are those things that have positive consequences. Okay, so what is the function of the medical system? What is the function of the medical system in society? Looking at it from a functionalist approach. Cure people or keep them healthy. Now, the keeping healthy part, that's a fairly new thing, isn't it? We used to kind of have a curative model in the United States, curing people of what ails them, okay? Curing it. So keeping healthy is a new thing, and we'll be discussing that when we talk about the medical institution. And how did the change come, not only from curing people, but suddenly to keep them healthy? Why do we do that? Why is it important? We discussed it during our first two sessions. Because we are a rational system. And in a rational system, you want to do what in capitalism? What's the number 1 and 2 objectives in the capitalist economic model?
Cost-benefit analysis of things.
Right, which means
Case that preventative medicine is more cost-efficient, generally speaking, than doing the curative model.
right. Well, just to put it in simplistic terms, because I'm a very simple person, one thing you want to remember in capitalism: increase profits, lower costs, lower expenses, minimize losses. So society also, in a functional system, looks how to keep the system in balance. This is another concept in the functionalist perspective. Everything has to be maintained in a balance. Okay? So the functions are those things that have positive consequences. The medical system keep you healthy, keep you well, cure you. Positive function. What are some of the dysfunctions? Dysfunctions, actions that have negative consequences. Let's look again at the medical model just to stay within the same subsystem. What are some of the dysfunctions of the medical model as it exists originally to cure people? Well, let's look at some of the diseases that take a long time to develop. If you don't prevent them, then the system becomes dysfunctional because you may get too sick to be cured. And I know that every day we read in the newspaper and we hear about medical drugs, wonder drugs. We hear about new curative systems. We hear about new natural or alternative medical techniques. And if you watch your television for more than 18 minutes, you'll be bombarded with about 13 drug ads. Everything from, and if you look also at some of the consequences when the drug ads didn't work, you see people that are riding around in motorized wheelchairs or these motorized cars. That means that I guess the medical system didn't work if you end up riding in a cart when you're 50 years old. Something went wrong. Okay? So there is a dysfunction in the way the system is set up. Perhaps they didn't do a cost-benefit analysis. And unfortunately, societies, except for the communist societies that kind of collapsed in 1991, which said that they were trying to do a planned model of society and plan everything and predict everything and do everything for the individual. Obviously, they didn't work well either. So no one is sitting around that has a big group of people sitting around, well, how can we make every institution rational? Every institution function as part of a system. Make every subsystem work in a way that there are no dysfunctions. Is that possible to have a structure without dysfunctions? Can we ever achieve that?
No.
Why not?
No system is perfect. Things change. Even when you get a system in place that works, it's always, variables are going to affect it, so it's not perfect.
Okay, what have we said about social change? It's unrelenting. It doesn't stop. We can't stop it. It keeps on moving. So even though we may have a perfect way of doing something today, within 24 hours, it could be obsolete. People also make things obsolete. We can sit and plan the best system. We can diagnose the way everything works. And yet, there are things that will cause it to become unbalanced. So remember, the functionalist perspective is about balancing. Balancing the system, all the parts work in harmony. We'll be talking a lot about this in different aspects, sociological aspects, when we examine different parts of society and society's behavior. We'll either be looking at the functionalist perspective, and as we'll soon talk about the conflict perspective, and the third perspective that we'll probably cover in chapter 3 or 5, I believe, symbolic interactionist perspective. What do we mean by the idea of perspective? What do we mean by perspective?
How we view things.
How we view things, okay? So, just imagine that each one of us is wearing a pair of prescription glasses with a slightly different strength on each eye. Now we all go into the same room, we go into the museum or art gallery, and one person looks at an abstract painting and says, look how clear this is. This is exactly the way I feel. And the other person comes in and looking through their glasses, they say, this doesn't make any sense. Everything is blurry. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, look, this green, a tree is not the same kind of green that we see every day. The sun is totally brown instead of orange and yellow. The perspective, we all look at things a little different. And some of us have a humanistic perspective. What does that mean? You have nothing. Okay. Anybody else? What is a humanistic perspective?
Like the individual,
Maybe looking at the way people would look at things. Okay. Putting people at the top of our list of concern. What about a natural perspective? How would we look at things from a natural perspective? Pardon?
putting nature first.
Right, thinking how does this affect nature? How does nature affect this particular activity or structure or function in society? Okay. How does the ecological balance affect human beings, or how human beings affect the ecological balance? That would be a natural perspective. What about a technological perspective? Do you have any technology, sir? You gotta press the button down. I can't hear you. What technology have you used this morning? Did you use a cell phone this morning?
No, just the television.
You used the television. You didn't talk to anybody on the telephone.
No.
You didn't drive over here.
No.
No. Did you use a bicycle?
Actually, I have somebody that dropped me off here.
So you did use some technology to get over. You didn't walk on your own power. Okay. So looking in the terms of a technological perspective, you view everything the way that technology affects it. And you ascribe every big event, everything that's going to happen in your life in terms of technology. Hey man, did you hear? I got the latest video game. Woo! You ever meet some people like that? You have any friends who like all the time talking about the Nintendo or Sony video game? Have you ever gone to the Fun Factory? Okay, you don't have to admit. Oh, but you have been there. Okay, I thought I saw you there. I passed by that. I know if I remember, I had a photograph. How many of you look at things technologically? Boy, wait till I get the latest iPod. You. Okay, what technology did you use today? What is your name?
The cell phone.
Use the cell phone,
With
okay. And can you
computer on
imagine
it.
living without the cell phone? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You know that I used to have a carrier pigeon. No, I'm just kidding. But do you know what is a carrier pigeon? Ah. Carrier pigeon, especially during wartime when people were talking on radios that could be intercepted, they would send messages across the front line in World War I, World War II, and they wrap a little note to a pigeon. They used homing pigeon. You know what a pigeon is? It's a bird, right? And they sent the pigeon. They had some pigeons who knew how to go west for 12 miles. Another one knew how to go east for 6 miles. And that's how they sent messages, because they knew how to get from one place to the next and deliver messages. And it's very hard to listen to someone's conversation when a pigeon's carrying a note, right? So it's like the ultimate secret correspondence. So carrier pigeons, that was the old technology. Now we have the new technology, the cell phone, that you can't imagine living without. And do you know that till about 60 years ago in America, there were many telephones that shared a party line, especially outside of the big city. You know what a party line is? Right. It's not like Saturday night, at the bowling alley. Party line is actually where you lift up the phone, and if someone else is talking, you got to wait till they finish, and then you can use the line. So technology has come a long way in changing our lives in that way, right? Okay, cell phone. What other technology do you use? Do you ever play the video games? Xbox. That's Microsoft's thing? Okay. And are you really good? I can't hear you without me. You're really good. So you think it's eye-hand coordination. So you think you're going to apply to the United States Navy jet fighter training program? No. Okay. But those are some of the skills you probably need as a jet fighter pilot. Did you see Top Gun? Yeah, okay. So would you like to live Tom Cruise's life?
Or
Okay. So maybe I should send a Navy recruiter out to see you. In any case, technological perspective is seeing everything in terms of the changing and evolving technology. Do you read hot rod magazines or latest car magazine? Do you like cars? That's not your big thing. Okay. So we all have a different perspective about life in terms of what's really at the top of our priority list. And we define things in terms of change, in terms of things are working, in terms of that perspective. Some people have a medical perspective. Okay? If you ever meet some people, let's say, who are elderly, what we describe geriatric, we discuss all their life in terms, and everybody that they know in terms of what illness they have. Becky, she's had this bad cold. She's been coughing up a weird storm every morning. And John has been limping like a dog, like a dog hit on a bad road. And this guy, and they just found a cure for stopping tobacco addiction. So some people look at the medical perspective. Okay. Getting back again to the functionalist perspective, we started by talking about the functions. The dysfunctions, there are things that are part of the system that don't work well. And manifest functions. What are manifest functions? The intended functions, okay? So when you come to MCC, what are the manifest functions here?
You learn.
That you learn something, okay? And our obligation as catering to our customers is that we do what? That we teach and train, and that actually we achieve certain outcomes. What's the most important outcome at the end of a particular program?
Graduating?
Graduating or getting a degree? Yes, that's the outcome. Hey, we don't hide it. There are some places in the world where you could buy a degree. only takes about 24 hours once your credit card clears through. But that's not really a worthwhile degree, is it? And the next time you get called in to assist in open heart surgery when you finish medical school, and you skip the part about opening up the chest cavity, that could be a real problem. Even if you have the degree, you didn't learn anything, didn't you? You get found out pretty quick. Sometimes people get away with it for years, most of the time. And what are some of the latent functions of going to school?
Meeting people,
Dating, okay. What about the fact that for the first time, you have a lot of personal responsibility on meeting the assignments and the expectations of the teaching staff? For the first time, you're being asked to think and actually work on your own. Many times, as you find in this class as well, the answer is not in the book. How many of you ever heard of the singing group Simon and Garfunkel? They had a famous line from the song, I remember, the answer is written where? Where? Anybody know what their song, the answer is written? On the subway wall. Okay? Because when you travel, for those of you who have been in New York City, you would know there are subways running under the ground. In fact, they were on strike for 3 days about a month ago. When you sit in a subway car and you're traveling with maybe 100 other people in the same subway car, and you don't have anything to read, you just read all the advertising on both sides. Yes?
But they had like on one of their album covers, like they were in a subway and behind them, like somebody had written on a subway wall, like F off.
Yeah.
So I think that was really useful out too.
Yeah, but the point is that the point was, you got me. See, this is what happens. Sometimes you lose your train of thought, which can happen. The point is that we have many latent functions. One of the latent functions in the school are the many things you described, the socialization. Okay, we learn how to interact on a different level. One of the main reasons is that we don't all go through the same classes. We all don't share the same experiences. So we meet a lot of different people than when we normally would meet in high school and lower grade school. So we learn also things like the values that the school tries to internalize. Values such as commitment to society, a work ethic, feeling of citizenship, expectations of planning your own future. For the first time when you come to college, it is not the role of your parents any longer to control your fate. You're supposed to take some responsibility for it yourself. Okay, so that was kind of a brief discussion of the social parts, the functions, the social equilibrium and functionalist perspective. What about the next perspective, which was based on whose theory? Karl Marx, conflict. Remember Durkheim? His word was anomie, function. Karl Marx emphasized what? What did we say before? What was the operative work in Karl Marx's theory? Alienation, okay? Alienation, and he focused on some other aspect of human behavior, the exercise of power. Exercise of power. And social power is the ability to get others to do what you want, even if they don't want to do it. So do you do things that you don't want to do? What about when your parents tell you to do something that you don't want to do? Do they have power? Yes? How many of you think that parents exercise power? Okay, almost everybody. Okay, everybody has the feeling that parents exercise power. And do they do it against your will? To exercise power, you must have also one important part. What must you have holding in your hand?
Leverage.
Leverage. What do we mean by leverage? What is your name? I'm sorry. Laura. Have you felt your parents' exercise of power?
Not in a long time.
Not in a long time, so they don't exercise power over you anymore. Do you remember into earlier childhood when they did exercise power?
They did.
What exactly did they force you to do?
To school.
Go to school. Wow. Okay, would you have gone to school if they didn't exercise that power?
Mm-hmm.
So when we are feeling the power of our parents or someone close to us, the assumption is that they are doing it for our own good, right? But when you are in the social structure, can we assume that people are doing things for our own good?
Seems like sometimes, like say in society or work, it seems like the one with the power might be doing it for their own good.
Well, very good point. Very good point. Yes. The one who's exercising the power may be doing it for their own good. But society is held together. The cohesion of society is held together by the exercise of power. Because just like a child not wanting to go to school, if there was no exercise power, and we could have active power or benign power, it could be just interpreted as the exercise of power or just a symbol of the power, and we abide by it, or it could be an active use of power. Our government, whether it's the federal government, the state government, or the local government, they're doing things for our own good, aren't they? So when you pay the sales tax at Costco, or at Walmart, or at Safeway, is that for our own good? Shaking heads doesn't help me here, so please, if you have something to say, please press the button. How about in the back that we haven't heard for a while?
I'm sure some of it does, but I don't exactly know where sales tax goes
It's hard
to.
for us to decide which actions are for our own good and which are not. Because many of the statements and many of the actions of those who exercise the power are what Joshua said, very self-serving. They're made to reinforce the image that they're doing something for us. If we want to get someone to do something to conform to our wishes or exercise social power, how do we do it? How will you get me to give you an A in the course? Do the work. Okay. So it's very important, though, that you know which work you have to do, isn't it? So what does that mean? What do I have to do? Well, right. Don't use that word, please. And put away that $100 bill, please. What do I have to do if I want you to do something? Yes?
I'd have to convince you or influence you in a certain way.
Before I can do that, what do I have to do?
Establish incentives and consequences.
Even before that.
Reinforcement.
All those things are true, but what's my starting point? Before she can do any work for her, what do I have to establish? Expectations, of course. I have to establish the expectation, what I wanted to do. Otherwise, she'll be running all over. She'll be baking cakes tonight for me. She'll be reading 3 books, doing a term paper. She doesn't know what is necessary, or what my expectations are. So people in power, the first thing they have to do is get someone to understand what they want, what they expect. Another issue in the conflict perspective is the issue of dominance. Now, some people don't mind or actually look forward to being told what to do. Other people resent it. They don't want to be told what to do, and especially when you're in your teen years, you have a rebellious streak. Why do we get this rebellious streak against the exercise of legitimate power by our parents, by our schools, and so on? What happens that you suddenly, from a nice little boy or girl, 10, 11 years old, parents taking pictures, showing all the relatives, grandfather gives you on Christmas some money, everything is hunky-dory, and then suddenly you get into that 13, and everything, I don't want it, I'm not going to do that. What happened? What happened to the nice children? Anybody want to guess what happened?
Social influence?
Where does it all come from? Latent functions of the school happen there. The same thing happens in prison. Just a quick divergence from our course here. What does prison do best? Punish, rehabilitate, or educate? Educate. What are they educating? How to be a better criminal, yes. That's the latent function of the prisons. To teach you how to do your next job better when you get out of prison. Not get caught. Where can you learn this except from the repeat offenders in prison? The same thing in school. When you're 11, 12 years old, you're getting your first feelings of independence. And it wouldn't be so bad, except you got all the reinforcement from everybody around here. Hey, John, I know we can sneak a smoke in the back of the school. Hey, let's go to the toilet over here. Oh, I know how to get away with signing my parents' signature to the report card. Don't worry about it. I got a signature done. You're learning all these other things. Good things too, bad things too. But again, the rebelliousness is reinforced by everybody else. Because everybody else is doing it. Everybody else wants to dress silly or look funny, or look in a way that angers their parents, and they know how to really grind it. I'm going to show those suckers. I'm going to show them. And it drives them off the yin-yang. That's why maybe one of the big industries of the future are like farms for teenagers from 13 to 18. Send the kids off to a farm. You pay $5,000 and you kind of learn to cope with this. I don't know. This is just what I have crazy ideas. Okay, so power, very, very critical. Dominance can lead to conflict because your parents, the more your parents try to subdue you, to get you to behave in the way that they expect, the more you rebel, the higher you fight, the more you resist. And they don't know that the best way to perhaps cope with this is go with the flow, monitor, look, supervise. Don't try to force. Because it's a very critical stage, the period that we are in the last years in high school and college, where we are trying to do what? Formulate our own personality and our own responses to the social interaction of being individuals. So, social change is very normal. The social change that you might be experiencing or experienced during high school is very, very normal. You're just collecting experiences, evaluating behaviors, integrating and internalizing some of the things you've learned with what belief system that you have developed. Just for my edification, Anybody have any ideas when your parents actually finish molding your personality? About what age were you? 21. Gotta press that button. Okay, 21. Anybody else? 18. 18. We got 21, 18. Do I hear any other number?
I say 3.
3. Do I hear another number?
They're alone, like you might live with them.
You might live with them. You think they still influence your personality. I didn't say your behavior. I said your personality. So you think as long as you live with them. So if you're living till like about 60 or 75, hey.
When are we saying personalities absolutely set though? When
Right.
we agree on that?
Right. Right. So we heard a variation between 3 and 75 over here. Any other takers? Yes.
7.
7. Good. Actually, at about age 5, they've lost it. If they didn't do it the first 5 years from 0 to 5, so I'm sorry for those who have hopes that they can control their children. It's late. It's late in personality. You can control people's behavior. And that's what power is all about. Many people confuse changing the personality with getting people to do what we expect. All the time, power influences us to do things that are expected of us. I exercise the power. I tell you, you got to come to class, do the homework. You produce. I reward you. Very simple. Your parents do the same. How many of you have tried before the holidays in the winter to try to be really good? Like the last 2-4 weeks before Christmas or Hanukkah. Like, maybe they'll forget about the other 11 months. I wasn't so perfect. And kind of, I see here, knowing laugh. You've used that strategy, right? Okay, very, very good. Another important thing about power, it holds society together. Many times it's either by direct pressure from the top, because remember, wherever we work, wherever we live, wherever we participate as citizens, someone is exercising power over us. One of the places you feel it the most is closed institutions, whether they're prisons, schools, hospitals, military, police, all institutions that exercise power to a much greater degree. You cannot, when you are lying in a hospital bed, you can't just suddenly leave in the middle, can you? Or for medical reasons, for financial reasons, or for participating in a particular medical adventure that you chose. And power also dictates the formation of temporary alliances. Temporary alliances. What do we mean by that? Well, how many times have you seen, when watching the news or reading the newspaper, that there are political organizations that are formed and come apart? Some Democratic senator will join a Republican senator. Some group with one particular ideology will join another group with a totally different ideology because they have an interest in common. Can you think of a situation like that? Yes.
The ACLU and the Ku Klux Klan.
The Ku Klux Klan and the ACLU, we mentioned it before, of course, because the ACLU is considered politically a liberal left-wing organization, and yet they promote the most important aspect of the U.S. Constitution that's constantly being raised, and that's free speech. So they promote free speech, whether it's for the Ku Klux Klan, the Communist Party, whatever unpopular ideology or popular ideology, the right to speak freely. So again, they may have an alliance of convenience to form a more powerful unit. Do we have any questions about the perspectives of the conflict perspective or the functional perspective. Anybody? Yes.
I don't understand how power holds society together.
Well, think about the government. How does the government hold? What is the government able to do? You just saw in the past week, I think one of you sent me an article about the failure of the Medicare pharmaceutical changes that came about in the last 2 weeks, where the whole system is falling apart in terms of trying to get drugs for the elderly. How does government have power? If you looked yesterday at yesterday evening's news, the president issued a directive to all the insurance companies to immediately issue 30-day supply of drugs to all the people who were on Medicare, who were having difficulty getting drugs under the new system. Was that an exercise of power? Could the president actually go to each pharmacy, grab the guy by his shirt top, and say, listen, you better sell some drugs to the elderly at the prices that we told you to sell? Could he do that? How many pharmacies are in America? Maybe 6-7 million? Could he go and get to all of them before the year 3012? Well, what can he do? He has power. How does he exercise the power? Goes to the Food and Drug Administration. It says, issue immediately over the internet, by email, directives to all the insurers and all the pharmacists to honor this. Can he police that right away? Can he send police to check? No. He can't do that. But he can issue an example, a symbol of his power by going on television and announcing this. And immediately has an effect. Will it affect everybody? Will everybody comply? No. That's the exercise of power that holds society together. Because the organization, whether it's the government, or your employer, or the school, has two important things they have. What are those two important things that they can enforce their power or will? If I want you to do something, okay, I can try to use two things. They may not work. Some of us will not respond to it. But if I want you to go now to the cafeteria and bring me a Diet Coke, okay? So I can have an implied event that will occur if you do or don't bring me the Coke. Okay, I can imply something. I can say something like, I would really like you now to get me a Diet Coke in the cafeteria. You say to yourself, of course, it's the office rocker. He expects me to write down the notes and stay in class, and I'm supposed to bring a Coke when I'm a slave? And I look to you like some kind of secretary here? No secretary, but just in case, I'm just a kind of. But the point is, there are two other ways I can go about it. One, I can offer a reward. Okay? So I can say, if you bring me a Coke, you'll get an A in the course. Or, I let you borrow my favorite sociology book. A reward, but hey, reward is a reward. Or I can go the other route. I can offer a sanction. If you don't go and buy me a Diet Coke, you definitely will not get an A in the course. So, rewards and sanctions, very, very critical to exercising power. If you did not want to serve in the military, when there was still a draft in the United States during the Vietnamese War, what options did you have? The power came in a letter, said report on such and such a date to your induction center, meaning where you're going to be converted from a civilian to a soldier. And what kind of rewards or sanctions do you think that the government could apply? Well, they could offer a GI Bill, ask you to enlist. There was no GI Bill, if, I believe, if you were drafted. It was mostly for those who volunteered to go, like for long term. But they could punish you. You didn't show up. You went to prison. And the reward was if you signed up and volunteered, you'd have benefits from the GI. So again, government exercise power through rewards and sanctions. Any other questions on the two perspectives, the conflict and the continuity? What I want to start now with is the section on sociological research and the methodology we use in sociological research. The first methodology is qualitative. Qualitative comes from the word quality. In qualitative methodology, we try to capture the feeling of the behavior of people within the social structure, within social institutions. We try to figure out and interpret their behaviors in a way that makes sense to us. And we use basically three techniques in qualitative research. The first technique is historical record. Historical records, old letters, baptismal certificates, birth and death certificates that we've talked about before. Another methodology is using interviews and life history. One of the favorite techniques is what we call an oral history. Have any of you been familiar with that technique? Oral history is where you interview someone who's already past their 60s or 70s, and they talk to you a lot about their life, and you videotape it and record everything they say. And go on for hours, and it's very common now to have complete libraries of oral histories. Why is that technique important in sociology? What does it give us that perhaps a historical record or a book would?
Different perspectives.
Different perspective. What kind of perspective do we get?
Personal.
A personal perspective. Very good. What else is it? What is it about videotaping someone as they're talking about their whole life? Someone who's 60, 70, or 80 years old. Yes?
The humanistic perspective?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Human.
It's a humanistic perspective. Definitely. Definitely a humanistic perspective. You see a person looking over their life in a very definite perspective, but relating in such a way that they bring people, events, all history gives life. Just as if someone comes here and talks about their experience in one of America's war, whether it was World War II, Korean War, or Vietnam War, it's much more alive to hear the person describe it. Some of the day-to-day activities that we don't read about in history books. Now remember, the historical perspective had a very big limitation, especially as we go backwards. What happened in the 15th or 16th century? Who did people write about? Who did Shakespeare write about? Well, they wrote about famous people. They wrote about priests who are cardinals or archbishops. They wrote about princes and kings. They wrote about the sheriff. They wrote about King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table. They didn't write about Joe Blow from Kokomo. Right? They didn't talk about the blacksmith Robert in some village in Wales. So the life we have described in many books, unfortunately, focus on a particular group of people, the privileged classes. And we know very little about their real life except through their perspective and their lives. That's a problem with the historical record. We talked about interviews and life history. We try to find out why people are swayed, joining certain ideologies, or joining certain social movements or belief systems. Another possible way of qualitative research is participant observation. William White was one of the originators of this particular methodology. And he spent a year or 2 years with a street gang in Philadelphia, chronicling all the events that happened in their life.
William White.
William Foote White. W-H-Y-T. In participant observation, there's always the danger that you will affect what you're reporting. So if you had a researcher who's not a member either ethnically, racially, demographically of the same group, and he joins the group for purposes of chronicling and studying the group, just the effect of having perhaps a big haole guy in a Hawaiian group will alter perhaps the behavior of the group. Can we eliminate this? No. Perhaps in the future, or if we can find someone in the same racial or ethnic group, same age group, to participate with the group, he's less noticeable. So there are ways of coping with participant observation, but it's a very difficult process and takes a lot of investment, a lot of good thinking by these sociologists. Quantitative methods are the second way that we do research. And we can do it either through a structured interview, where we have a systematized questionnaire, either self-administered by the participant or administered to the participant by the researcher. We look at particular population, which is the group that we're interested in. So if I was studying this particular class, the population would be all the students in this class. But suppose that I found that my class was too big. Suppose I had 300 students in the class and I couldn't study everybody or give everybody a questionnaire. I would try to get a sample, assuming everybody was the same in the class. So I would take a sample, maybe pick 10 students to represent the 300 to get some information on how I was having an effect on the students in the class. But if I wanted the students that I picked to be exactly representative of the student demographics, racial, ethnic, religious, age-wise, gender-wise, then first I would have to divide the class into those groupings, and from each of those groupings pick a small sample to represent everybody. Now obviously the reason we do sampling is because we can't study complete population. If we want to study what all the women in the United States think about abortion, how many women are there in the United States? Well, anybody know the population of the U.S.? It's going to turn 300 million in the summer. 300 million people. So assuming that the chance of being male or female is about 50-50, how many females can we assume in the United States population? 150, I can't hear you. 150 million. Okay, good. So 150 million, that's about the win. But obviously, we have to already now start cutting back a little bit, because we are not going to interview 3-month-old female who were just released from the hospital. We're not going to interview someone who's 5 years old about their feelings. Abortion, because obviously it has no relevance to their particular perception of the world. So let's assume that half will be adults. Does that make sense? Now, if you want to interview the half that are adults, that's 75 million. Am I okay on the math? Now suppose we wanted to eliminate those women who are not yet of childbearing age and those women who are over the childbearing age. That makes sense? Why? Why does it make sense? Well, abortion is very much a political debate, isn't it? So why would we eliminate the people who are over childbearing age, who may have a political statement to make because they've been through the childbearing age? So we might not want to eliminate the ones who are past the childbearing age, but we might want to eliminate the ones who are not yet in childbearing age because they may not have had to think about those issues. Again, this is a judgment of the researcher. But the point I'm getting at, even if we slice and cut away, we still have about 50 million people who are female. Is this plausible to try to evaluate what 50 million women think? It's just a logistical nightmare, isn't it? Well, that's why we came up with sampling. We sampled different groups, different geographies, different demographics to get as representative a sample as possible. Do you think that this will change with the internet? How can this change with the internet?
If anything, it would make it easier.
How?
The ability to reach people efficiently would be, made better.
One of the things we really want to think about when you think about the technology will affect other aspects of our life in the future. We'll be able to vote without ever going to a voting booth. This is happening in certain parts of the world already. You sit in front of your computer, put your ID code or your thumb identification, or your corneal ID where you can scan eyes by just putting your face into a reader. So you don't vote twice and identify the particular person, and suddenly you can vote directly. We can find out, we can limit the voting period to 3 hours on a particular day, but everybody's got to have access to a computer. Maybe through the telephone, maybe through the mobile phone. Take your mobile phone, stick it on your eye, bingo! That's Dr. Barton. Dr. Barton, you want to vote? Put it in front of your eye, you see a list of 10 people, vote it. Within perhaps a minute or two, you can find out what the whole country is thinking. What will that do to referendum? What will that do to survey? Projections of who's winning a particular election? All will change because the sampling technique and the ability to get feedback is changing as we talk. It's going to be radically changing very, very quickly. Now, sampling has had a terrible reputation because in past surveys there were some mistakes, especially in past predictions about voting outcomes. In the 1930s, they used to do surveys by telephone. And if you read the surveys in telephone, the problem was that only the rich people had the telephone. And they were using their white pages to make a random selection. So either they picked very wealthy people to study what would they vote, their predictions on voting in the election. And obviously they predicted wrongly because there was a whole group of people that they didn't test. As I talked also about at the beginning of the lecture about ethics in research, because of the damage that we can do to people who participate in research, it's very, very important that we get their permission. We talked about that during on television. This came as a result of unethical research done during World War II by the Nazis against Jews, Gypsies, Poles, various other minority groups, where they used twins for experimentation and so on. So we have research and ethics protocols and require permission in advance society before we ask people's opinions, before we add divulge information, before we ask them to give very personal information. Okay, please, I hope the WebCT works for you. And if there are any problems, please contact me in my office. Again, my telephone number is 808-984-3326. Welcome you next time.